I'm Rabbi Patrick, and welcome to Kehillah. Let's get our opening kavanote started here, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you about all the things that we have going on. So this is Proverbs 18:22. And if you're in your car, if you're driving the kids to school, if you're finally getting some time on the treadmill, whatever you happen to be doing, it's really an honor that you spend your time here with Kehillah in this particularly exciting and inclusive and very available way, which is the Kehillah podcast. And I hope that you'll support us, because here's the thing, right? We don't charge for this. There's no like tickets to download the podcast. And in a lot of ways, this is now the way that we do adult ed. So that $10 donation you would have given to come to a class, yeah, we've got it right here on the podcast. So I hope you'll give a donation to support this. I really enjoy this. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And if you don't enjoy it, I hope you'll send me an email and let me know what we can do to make it better, rabbi@rabbipatrick.com. So maybe you are closing your eyes. Maybe you're taking a deep breath. And here we go with Proverbs 18:22. Think about what you want to gain from this moment, what you're putting into it as I read these words. He who finds a wife has found happiness and has won God's favor. And then you're like, well, but wait a minute, I already have a wife, or I'm not looking for a wife, or hey, doesn't the he and the female, aren't you excluding a bunch of people? Yeah, no, totally. I get it. But also, this episode is about Jewish dating in Richmond, Virginia. And truth be told, I probably have no right to say anything about this topic because I came here married. But we got a bunch of single people in our Kehillah community. And, Kehillah, what's interesting about us is we actually go beyond the sort of boundaries of what it means to be a community, right? We don't just hang out with each other. We hang out with other people too. So maybe you're at Beth Hava or you're at Bethel or whatever. You're talking to people. You're at the JCC. Shout out to Panina, who actually put together a Jewish matchmaking event, which was pretty cool. I wasn't there, but I heard positive things because, I'm married. So I get into these conversations, right, with all different kinds of people. And when you're married and you have a kid, you're separate from these conversations about dating and love and relationships and dating scenes and apps and whatever, right? But at the same time, as a spiritual leader and as someone who sits and has conversations with people, sometimes really difficult conversations with people, I kind of have to have my ear to the ground a little bit, right? I can't sort of just say, whoop, well, I am not in that phase. I'm not in that stage. This isn't my problem. I kind of have to be in every stage at all times. I have to know, what the hottest little kid trend is. And I have to know, what people are dealing with at the end of life. Right? I have to know all of it. So, as part of that, I rely upon all of you Kehillah people to tell me, like, whatever age and stage and thing is going on in your life. If you're part of a broader group that's dealing with something, and I'm not part of that group, you got to tell me. You got to let me know. And you need to teach me. So, the Jewish singles of Kehillah, which is not a group, by the way, I just want to go ahead and put that out there because that sounded a little more official than it is. But the unattached people in our congregation have kind of given me some insight, have told me a little bit about what's going on out there. And yes, this is very much a dad advice type of podcast episode. I totally admit that. Going ahead, get me my New Balances. I'm going to stand out in front of the lawn with a hose, even though it's like 40 degrees outside and I wouldn't do that. But you get the metaphor, right? This is a certain element of, let me teach you how to tie a tie. It just is. Like, I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. I'm not interviewing like single Jews and asking them about their whatevers. These are things that I learned about from all of you out in the wild, at all of the coffee with the rabbis, at all of the, events we do where someone tells me about what's going on and such and such, right? And of course, I'm not going to tell anybody's private stuff. That's not cool. I wouldn't do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you an assessment of what I'm hearing out there. And maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree, I don't know. And then the next part is I'm going to deal with this thing of Jewish matchmaking. I'm going to be kind of your Yenta on this one. I'm going to be your Shadchan because actually I did this on accident once. I'll tell you a funny story about that. So, first, I'm going to tell you what other people tell me. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just telling you what the scene is out there as best as I know from the people who really know. Then I'm going to tell you a really dumb story about me. And then I'm going to give you some advice about Jewish dating here in glorious Richmond, Virginia. But first, let me give you some announcements about all the events we have coming up. So, everybody knows Brittney, as in Austin and Brittney, right? Like, Brittney is famous in our congregation. She's totally awesome. And she comes up to me and she says, "Hey, we need to do some Jewish sort of home ec type classes." And I'm like, let's do this thing. So, Brittney, who is so incredible, has agreed to do a latke making class at my house. So that's Tuesday, December 9th, 6 p.m. We're going to make different kinds of latkes. I'm going to kind of interject with some Jewish knowledge stuff around like the real story of Hanukkah. And it's not about the oil. I know everyone thinks that the Middle East is about the oil. Sometimes it's not about the oil. So latke making class with Brittney, Tuesday, December 9th, $10, people. Like $10 to eat a lot of really delicious carbohydrates deep fried in oil. Let's do this thing. Okay, so that'll be a Tuesday. The following Friday, Shabbat dinner and service at my house. So, shout out to Heater Meats Virginia, right? The Happy Cow people. We have some more meat that we need to finish up of theirs, so I'm gonna make all kinds of delicious stuff. I'm thinking like maybe something inspired by Michael Solomonov and the sort of places like Laser Wolf and Zahav and all of those kind of restaurants up in like Philly and Brooklyn, lots of salatim, like maybe some kebabs. I don't know, something in that genre, maybe. To be determined. Or I might go full Ashkenazi. I mean, we're talking matzo ball soup and brisket and lots of very beige looking casseroles in the spirit of Thanksgiving, which will have ended long before this particular Shabbat. But that'll be Friday, December 12th, 6 p.m. If you can't afford a ticket, we're going to give you one for free because that's how we roll. Kehillah cares, always here to help. The next day, Shabbat Torah study at the rabbis with bagels and fish and cream cheese and vegan options. And of course, we'll study the Torah portion. And I'm thinking about long term. I'd like to do something maybe north side. Maybe we do some coffee shop takeovers for Shabbat morning Torah study. I don't know. I want your thoughts on this. Send me an email. Let me know how you feel about that. And then, of course, always talking about the 8th annual Hanukkah party at Art Factory. You know how that works. Saturday, December 20th, 5:30 is doors open. 6 p.m. is menorah lighting. And so you can bring a Hanukkah to light or we'll let you bum one. And yes, we have candles. So that's at Art Factory, 5:30. All of these things you must RSVP. No just showing up because you want to. You must RSVP. Again, if you need a free ticket, no big deal. We will take care of you. Kehillah Cares has got your back. Just go to kehillahrva.org. You can go on Kehillah Cares. You can go on our calendar, all kinds of info. We are here to build community together in any way that we can. And I hope to see you at some, if not all, of this really great stuff. So now, as I am having a Singapore sling right here, made in the tiki room, let's talk about Jewish dating. So I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing out there, and then I'm going to tell you a story about me from a long time ago, and why sort of this idea of being a matchmaker kind of like thrills me, like the idea that that could be something I could help with, um, and totally won't do too much of, I promise. And then I'm just going to talk about some ways that you can be your own matchmaker. What are some ways that you can find the love of your life? So let's get into it. So the first thing, which isn't really a thing about sort of Richmond in particular, it's just a truism. Having lived in several different places, I can tell you every city has a culture. So I tell people I'm originally from Atlanta, and that's true. I wasn't born there. I lived a bunch of other places, but I think of Atlanta as where I spent my formative years. So formative elementary school years, middle school, and then coming back there as an adult. It is not what I consider home. Richmond is home. But there's a culture in Atlanta, and it's hustler culture. It's, of course, someone works at Target 40 hours a week, but then they also are working on their rap label, but they're also selling socks out of the back of a truck, but also they have a catering business. That's just the culture there. It is a hustle culture. It's very similar to LA, very similar to New York, and yet completely different because of its history. So that is Atlanta. If you go to New York, totally different culture and yet very similar. So what is it? Art, theater, niche groups, immigrants, right? Very different culture there. And yet it has a culture, it has an energy. People go there to be broke and to like make it, right? Now, very similar in LA. Lots of people go there to make it and to be broke, and yet different culture, different attitude. New York, Atlanta, and LA, completely different places. Similar types of issues around the hustle, and yet different energies. So then you go to other places, right? Akron is different than, wherever, anywhere, right? Everywhere has an energy. Here is the energy as far as Jewish dating as I have come to understand it. So, first of all, people here in Richmond marry young. They find their beloveds young and they marry young. Now, when I say young, I am not talking West Virginia young. I'm talking younger than national average, which is trending older and older and older. So, if you're here in Richmond and you didn't bring the love of your life with you, and you are single, like that's tricky, right? Because so much of the Richmond oriented, the Richmond origin story people, kind of like how I have the Atlanta origin story, but the Richmond origin story people, they're probably partnered in some way, right? And maybe it's not Richmond proper. Maybe they met at UVA, they met at Radford, whatever, right? But there's a lot of that. And if you're with someone from age 22 to 28, good chance you're going to marry him. And so by 30, you have become couple hooded, right? You are in. You have found your beshert. You're in your home. It is what it is. So then you have friends who are single who are 30 and they're surrounded by people who are already together with somebody, right? And it just like you don't need to date your friends necessarily, but it is kind of tough when all your friends are partnered whatever and they don't have single friends. So you go over for like a party at their house and it's all couples and you're the random Bridget Jones, right? And it doesn't matter if you're male, female, trans, you are the odd person out. And that's a terrible problem in Richmond. It happens a lot. So that's kind of the first issue. The second issue, which I alluded to a little bit, is a lot of the people who are coupled here, they brought someone with them to Richmond. So I'm actually that story. So Rebitson had lived in Richmond before. This is where she got her first, post master's degree job. So she worked in state government here, and she did that for a while. Then she went back to Atlanta, which is where our family lives. We met there and we were going to have our full life there. We bought a condo there. Life was going to be there. And now it's here. So, in a way, even though she's not from here, she did what Richmond people do. You are in Richmond, you go somewhere else, you find the love of your life, and you bring them back. So, you find a little bit of that. So, I know people who, their origin story is here in Richmond and they went somewhere else. They went to DC, Nova, whatever. They went to Charlotte, they went to wherever. And then they brought someone with them and they settled here. Okay. So that's the other issue. It goes back to that same problem of being invited to the house party and you're the one random single person. But it's even worse in that regard, right? Because how did that person meet the love of their life? Somewhere else. So that person's whole friend group of potential single people, they're in New York, they're in New Jersey, they're in Florida, they're in wherever, right? That doesn't help you. And I'm just assuming if you're listening to this, you're single. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just like, what on earth is Rabbi Patrick doing? Hey, welcome either way. But that doesn't help you, the single person, right? Either you are surrounded by people who met the love of their life when they were 19, okay, and now they're pushing 30, okay. Or you're surrounded by people who are partnered in some way and they met that person in California and brought them here. Okay, still doesn't help you. And so I meet a lot of single people who say, like, it just stinks. Like, there's just not this body of these single Jews here in Richmond. And it's funny because when I first moved here, I started having meetings with different sort of people here in the Jewish communities before I had my Kehillah job. And I would just ask people questions like, what do you think's missing here? What's something that could be done here? Right. And the only response I ever got from anyone that was terribly unique was someone who said to me, yeah, like get more young Jews to live here because there's not enough people to date. And the person who said that to me was in that category of people who brought someone from somewhere else and brought them here. So, right, like, yeah, so see examples number 1 and 2. And this person was always trying to do like young adult single stuff and doing the best they could and but they were already partnered and then they moved and had a kid and like happily ever after, which is great. But again, going back to this same issue of like, okay, yet again, we don't have this sort of story of two people who moved here, met each other, and got married, right? Or partnered in some way or another, and they happen to be Jewish, right? I haven't really seen much of that. I've seen more of the previous stuff. Now, in some cases, I've seen people who are Jewish who have met non Jewish partners and they're here. And those aren't people that necessarily connect to Kehillah, right? They are partnered, whatever. They want me to marry them. And then, we marry them. And maybe you see them at Kehillah every once in a while. But Kehillah wasn't sort of part of their original sort of Jewish journey, right? It was finding a rabbi and then realizing that rabbi was part of Kehillah. So in those cases, yes, you do find Jews who partner with non-Jews, and you can have that Richmond experience, right? But maybe that's not where your values align. Or maybe that's not, maybe you've tried that and maybe you just kind of want to kind of stay in the group a little bit. And that's okay. Every group, every individual in a group has a right to choose that. And we don't have to feel like that's prejudiced or wrong or anything like that. We are allowed to set parameters for the kind of person that we are going to fall in love with. That is not wrong. I think sometimes there's this kind of, I don't know, this kind of attitude that you're supposed to be open to everyone all the time. And I don't think that that's necessarily fair. It is okay for you to say, here are my hard lines. Okay. So that's kind of what seems to be going on here. And, I meet people and they have this problem. They're like, they go on different kinds of apps, whatever they try. I really don't know the spectrum of them. I know the names. I don't know what's better or not or whatever. Couples that I have talked to who want me to marry them, it's across the board. I get a little bit of Bumble. I get a little bit of Hinge. No one wants to admit Tinder, apparently. Apparently Tinder is an issue. I don't know. This is where I become the old guy in his cardigan on the lawn waving at the young people, right? So, I don't know. But that is to say, it's a struggle, and I get it. And then also, we're a relatively small Jewish community, like 20,000 of us, but small. And then also, not everyone who is part of this Richmond area who is Jewish thinks of themselves or wants to be part of a Jewish community or the Jewish community, which, side note, I should probably do an episode called There's No Such Thing as the Jewish Community. This has been one of my gripes for some time, but we'll use the term anyway. So yeah, so it's quite possible that there's some really awesome Jewish person, Jewish woman, Jewish guy out here in Midlothian where I live, and you're in Scott's Edition, right? And I know that that's the equivalent of like driving all the way to Pittsburgh. I know there's some sort of emotional thing that happens when you have to cross the James River. Believe me, I've lived on both sides of the river. I understand you have to update your passport. It's a real challenge. But that person who lives out here where I am, Jewish is maybe not the number one thing on their dating profile, if it even is. And yeah, they may know about something that's going on in the Jewish world in Richmond, maybe. I don't know. It's in their feed or whatever, but that's not necessarily going to be their number one thing. And so there's this whole population. I think it's actually like 15% or more of Richmond's Jewish community who is Jewish but not part of the community. And that's why Kehillah, I think, is so great because we're trying to open the door to everybody, right? We want everyone to feel included in some kind of way or another. So that's my sales pitch for Kehillah. Doesn't mean you're gonna meet the love of your life, means we're trying the best we can. So that's part of the issue too, right? So if you want to meet a person who's Jewish, okay, sure, you can meet someone who's Jewish. But is their profile going to say that, right? You may see some, guy named Jonah, but you don't know if Jonah is also Yonah, if you know what I mean. So that's a problem. That's a challenge for people. And then also, just because someone happens to be Jewish doesn't mean that your values align, that your interests align, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So there's just that problem. There's that problem of, is this a person who you're going to jive with? Is there a spark? Is there, is this a date worth even going on? Right. I get it. So that's where people are. They're stuck. And so that hasn't changed since 2016. So I'm coming up on 10 years here, and that's still the gripe. So going back to my earlier thing that I said about how cities have cultures. So the culture here in Richmond is settle down. It truly is. It is a settle down culture. So have the amount of job you want, have the amount of house you want, have the amount of kids you want, have the amount of communal connection, whether it's religious, cultural, whatever. But it's about having a moderated amount, right? There is a reason why Virginia, as the Commonwealth, kind of tends to be purple politically and swings back and forth all the time, right? Because it's just about having an amount of something, a moderated amount of, okay? And that's going to include a moderated amount of Judaism. Now, that may not be true for the person who's the JCC member, but they're also part of Federation, but they're also part of two synagogues. That person is an outlier. Okay. The majority of people here, regardless of their religious, spiritual, ethnic connections, are moderated in that way. It is a very middle ground, mainline type of community. So, again, it goes back to what I said earlier. It could be the love of your life who is on the same app as you, isn't going to put that they're Jewish. They may be Jewish, but that's not what they're going to lean in with. And so then from a Jewish dating perspective, that gets very complicated. It gets really hard. And then if you go into Jewish specific spaces, Jewish specific apps, you have dwindled the numbers down quite greatly. And we can sort of tell ourselves a story, which is wrong, that those are all of the Jewish people in the community. Again, see my earlier statement about some Jewish family out here or some Jewish single person out here who, is, just not putting that out there. So when you go into these Jewish, I would say nonprofit spaces, it's easy to think, oh my gosh, this is the only people who care about Judaism who are left. No, no, no. There's plenty of people. We just don't know them yet. So that's what people tell me. That's the kind of world that I see out there. So now, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you why I would love to be able to be a matchmaker. So let me tell you a little bit about how Rebbitzin and I met. And maybe you need to actually sort of listen to the episode where she and I talk, because I think we sort of go over it a little bit. But we met at this Jewish retreat. It wasn't like a singles thing or anything like that, but it was like an educational retreat. And I was watching, I was sort of a student in this class, this one session, and it was about what do Jewish women want? And it was this idea of you have someone in your 20s, a woman in her 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. And they're just talking about their lives and things that are going on, whatever. Well, one of them, who was on kind of the older side, either 50-ish, I think, 60 maybe, that person, said that there was this problem in Atlanta of Jewish guys only wanting to date women who were younger than them. And I just stupidly blurted out because a long time ago I was really immature and I've gotten past it. I've become a better person, always improving all the time, hopefully with God's help. I basically said, like, I didn't buy that because at the time I knew some really cool older Jewish guys who really cared a lot about Judaism and were in synagogues all the time and like went to events and all this stuff. And I said that the problem was there was a culture in Atlanta of economic success. And that the guys I happen to know who were on the older side, right, they weren't crushing it in the marketplace. That just wasn't what they were primarily focused on, right? They had jobs, but like that just wasn't what got them up in the morning. And in a hustler culture society like the one that I was part of, that made them the outsider. Now, this got interpreted as though I was saying that these women wanted men who had lots of money. That wasn't what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is that if you're an outsider in a community, you're not necessarily going to be considered as part of a dating pool. But nevertheless, it got interpreted the way it did. I felt really bad about that. And that's given me pause to think over the years of how you use what you say and, how you need to do a better job, right? Really moderating your speech, right? Pirkei Avot, say little, do much, right? But an interesting externality came out of this. So I happen to be sitting across this sort of table in this classroom from a woman who is a little younger than me at the time, and a woman who is kind of in her late 50s, early 60s. And I make this comment, and of course I'm getting booed. But afterwards, this young woman turns to the older woman, and I'm obfuscating a little bit because this is a little bit private, but she turns to the older woman and she says, it's actually kind of true, right? Like on some level, this is true. Like I'm not. I don't feel like I'm part of this culture of like work, 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 right? And I'm kind of a hippie, right? And the woman turns to her and says, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but like, I think that you might get along with my son really well. He's not into the bling, he's not into money. Yeah, he's going to med school, but like he wants to do like naturopathic work. He loves to hike. Like, would you be interested in like, getting his number or social media or whatever we had at the time? And she was like, Sure, why not? Like, a Jewish mom is trying to like set you up with her son. Like, you kind of have to say yes, even if you don't want to. But she said, yeah. And they got married and they have kids. And so I take credit for that. I say that my stupid comment, which was rooted in love for my middle-aged male friends who were single and wanted to meet the love of their life, but were going to be, not making their careers the number one thing. Um, I feel like I nailed one. That was a shidduch. That was a Jewish dating match moment, right? That's very meaningful to me. The mom in that story passed away shortly after that. Um, but in any case, there's a idea in our tradition that says that if you make 3 matches, you get to go to Olam Haba. You inherit Olam Haba, the world to come. Now, truth be told, I have been telling people this for years, that I made 1 match happen. I just need 2 more, and then I get to go to heaven. And that's my kind of silly joke. But I never actually ever looked up where that comes from. And it kind of turns out it doesn't really come from anywhere. It's just one of those things that like is culturally transmitted. There really isn't somewhere that I know of that says explicitly 3 matches equals the world to come. So I've been kind of giving people the wrong story about Judaism in that way. But it's still fun to talk about. So anyway, but I want 2 more. Why not? I want 2 more. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if Rabbi Patrick can hook you up. Truth be told, I'm not going to have this, same experience ever again. And given the fact that I have like reached a certain age, I really shouldn't be setting people up. I don't know, what people are looking for. I don't know what people's value sets are. I'm not in the shidduch, world. So instead, I felt like maybe I would just give you some thoughts. And some of this might sound kind of old timey, but I've only been married for, a little over 10 years. So, I don't think I'm that far removed from what it means to find the love of your life. But as someone who did, let me give you some advice if you're interested in what it means to be dating Jewishly in Richmond, Virginia. So, point number 1, understanding the culture. So, just what I talked about earlier, right? This is a culture of finding the love of your life early, getting married early, having kids early. Now, not early, relatively early. So, that's going to feel like a bummer. So, if you're someone who's on the apps, whatever, you need to understand, you need to broaden the pool. You need to be looking like DC. You need to be looking Charlotte. Yes, I know Long distance is tough, right? It's a struggle, but you've got to broaden your circle a little bit. And I think that's true just in general. Like, go to different kinds of places, go to different kinds of things, right? You know, try to expand what you think of as the world that you're allowed to date within. So, bigger geography and then bigger cultural group, right? So, maybe not everything you go to is Jewish. Maybe you go to the board game thing. Maybe you go to the trivia night. Maybe you go to whatever and you find the Jewish person who happens to be there looking for what you're looking for. So, those things. So, that is if you are focused on this area. But we also know that there is this idea of bringing someone from somewhere else to you. So, technically, yes, DC would be that, Charlottesville would be that, whatever. But let's think even more beyond that. So, I met the love of my life at a Jewish conference in the mountains. And funny thing is, we actually had friends in common. Like, there should have been some world where we ran into each other, but we didn't, right? How many Shabbat dinners did we not go to at the exact same time, right? It just kind of is what it is. So, things like that happen. So, what you need to do is you need to go to different types of Jewish things outside of Virginia. So, go to something cool in New York, go to something cool in DC, right? Go to something cool in Atlanta, right? Find these kind of weekend retreats, find these, Shabbaton weekends, whatever, and see if they've got a cool singles cohort of some kind, right? And cool doesn't have to mean like hipster, it just means like cool for you, right? Is it a middle aged group? Is it a 65 plus group? Is it a group that's into hiking? Whatever your thing is, right? But just go beyond here. And yes, again, I'm talking about dating long distance, and I know that sucks, but also you don't know who might be interested in living in a place like this. I never thought I'd move to Richmond, and it is my home, and it is where my child is from, and that means a lot to me. No amount of what Atlanta has to offer offers me what this offers. And so the opportunity to be here, to meet all of you, to build community with you here, oh, it means way more than anything that the ATL has to offer. So, going to things where you're going to find people who share your values. And maybe it's not just the Jewish stuff. So, guess what? Pride always needs help. So, you go to Pride. And yeah, you wear your I'm looking for a nice Jewish boy t shirt. It's okay. Advertise yourself. Seriously, right? Have fun with it. You know, what's the worst thing that can happen? So you go to something like the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, or you go to something that's environmentalism oriented, or you go to some, trade association thing for the industry that you're in, right? But get involved in other stuff. As the young people say, touch grass, right? Get out into the world physically. There is this problem. Oh my goodness. I was just talking to a wonderful Kehillah friend about this. And she said, it is amazing how many guys just do not know how to talk to women in public. And it's, as a man who talks to women, enough to then meet one and get married, I got to say, just basic social skills, guys, just putting it out there, basic social skills. Go online, learn some. It's that simple. But in any case, find places where people share your values and then just talk to people. Just get to know people. And I know, some people are just shy. I get it. Not everyone is someone who's going to go up to somebody at a cocktail thing, at a Hanukkah party, at whatever, and go, "Hey, my name's so and so. I think you're good looking." I get it. That's not a thing. But also, it's a little bit of a superpower. So maybe that's a muscle that some of us need to grow, right? Maybe COVID kind of made us a little lazy, right? Because back in my day, um, we had to talk to people in social settings, and it worked. My generation got married and had kids and all that, right? So maybe you just learn how to talk to people. And maybe you get a buddy to help you, right? The wingman, right? Find someone to go with. And by the way, because this happens every once in a while, sometimes people want to go to stuff that's not Kehillah things and they want someone to go with. Yeah, hit me up, because if it's not going to be me or a group of people that I'm connected to, Listen, I am happy to say, "Hey, you should talk to so and so. Hey, you should hang out with so and so." I don't know that necessarily you'll make friends with that person, but if you wanna just go to something and feel comfortable and have someone to talk to, it doesn't have to be weird. Everybody has this problem now. I am more than happy to say, "Oh, you're looking for a group of young women to hang out with. Okay, we have that here at Kehillah. Oh, you're looking for a group of older retirees. Hey, we've got that." I don't manage it, not my job to manage people's social interactions, but I am more than happy to connect you with someone who's part of our community, who you're gonna gel with on just a where you are life stage phase level, and then you guys can go out into the world and try to meet the loves of your life or your new best friends or your next work contact or whatever. Happy to do that for you. But you kinda have to do that. You gotta, like, physically get up and do stuff, and maybe you're gonna go to something, you're not gonna meet anybody. Okay, well, that could happen on a Thursday night on your couch, swiping with your thumb. That could happen too. And yeah, it feels like you've lost something because you had to, like, get dressed and leave and go somewhere, but you didn't, because it helped to sort of expand those muscles. Right? All of those muscles that got atrophied for 2 years of not going anywhere, not doing anything, not talking to anybody except for whoever was in your COVID bubble. So, gotta do that. Gotta get out there in the world. Volunteering. Seriously, volunteering is an awesome way to meet people. And nonprofits like Kehillah and others always need volunteers. And it doesn't have to be a huge commitment. We're not asking you to plan everything and manage everything and do everything. Just like, maybe you're going to be at a booth somewhere. Maybe you're going to help put up the decorations somewhere. And again, maybe you won't meet the love of your life, but maybe you'll meet some friend, you'll make some contact with somebody, or you'll meet someone who could be a mentor to you in a career. You never know. But again, flexing those social muscles. Also, and this is the part that's hard, because when you are a rabbi, you want everyone to just stay, right? It's just true. Like every new person I meet, I'm like, "Oh, please stay." Right? Like, please don't leave Richmond. And yet, I get it. Maybe you just have to leave Richmond. Maybe this city's done enough for you, and maybe you're just not in the age stage phase for it. And maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to find that other thing somewhere else. Maybe you go get that job somewhere else. Maybe you go to school in that different place. I know a woman who did that, right? She was here and she left and she met a guy and she brought him back. And that guy is me. So I know that this happens and it can happen. And you know what? If you leave and 10 years from now you come back and there's a kid in tow and you got the love of your life with you and you're just like, "Man, we need Richmond now. We are in the Richmond phase of life now. We weren't when we were 30, but dang, we are when we're 40." Okay, cool. Great. Kehillah's been waiting for you this whole time. So that's the thing. Get out there, put yourself out there, find some friends, touch grass, volunteer, get involved in nonprofits, go to things outside of Virginia, right? Go to some cool events at Sixth and I Synagogue in DC. Why not? Make a thing of it. Go stay at a hostel, right? Put yourself out there, meet people. And yeah, it may be that you're just in an age stage phase where Richmond's not right for you. And you're going to go and you're going to have a great adventure. And just know that Richmond and Kehillah is excited for when we see you back. Thanks so much.